England, 1872. The rain slides down the curved glass panels of the Whitmire Conservatory, turning the London night into a watercolor of shadows and candlelight. Inside, the air hangs warm and thick with the perfume of exotic orchids, palms reaching toward iron arches overhead, and the rustle of silk gowns moving through a carefully orchestrated dance of propriety and ambition. At the far edge of the room, half concealed by a marble urn overflowing with white jasmine, stands Lady Marianne Everley. Her gown is mustard gold, a shade that should have been relegated to the back of the wardrobe a decade ago, yet somehow it suits her. The fabric catches the candlelight as she moves, highlighting auburn hair swept into a modest twist, a single ribbon at her throat instead of the diamonds the younger women wear like armor. In a sea of pale pink and cream silk, she is the only woman who looks as though she belongs to a different era entirely. No one is looking at her. Not really. But everyone is talking about her. Still showing her face at these affairs, whispers Lady Pemberton behind her painted fan, her voice carrying just far enough. At 41, one would think she'd have the dignity to retire to the country. Her brother-in-law keeps inviting her out of pity, adds another voice, dripping with false sympathy. Poor thing. 20 years of failure. You'd think she would accept her fate by now. Marianne hears every word. She has perfected the art of appearing not to hear while absorbing every barb, every dismissal, every casual cruelty. She straightens her spine, lifts her chin just slightly, and turns her attention to the orchid arrangement before her, pretending the tightness in her chest is merely the humid air. Behind her, the steward's voice cuts through the murmur of conversation like a blade. His Grace, the Duke of Whitmire. The room isn't so quiet as it transforms. Conversations pause mid-sentence. Fans stop their fluttering. Heads turn in perfect synchronization, like flowers following the sun. Gabriel Thornmont steps through the arched doorway, and the very atmosphere shifts to accommodate him. He is tall, commanding in black tailcoat and gleaming white cravat, his top hat carried in one gloved hand. At 33, he possesses the kind of masculine beauty that comes from excellent breeding and complete self-assurance. Dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that seem to catalog everything they touch with cool precision. He is the most eligible bachelor in England, and he knows it. More importantly, everyone else knows it too. The debutantes arranged strategically around the room brighten, like candles suddenly given more air. Mothers nudge their daughters into better positions. The Duke has broken 3 betrothals in as many years, refusing match after match with increasingly thin excuses. Tonight, surely, he will choose. Gabriel's gaze sweeps the conservatory with practiced indifference. Past Lady Eliza Renshaw in her pale pink perfection. Past the Ashford twins, identical and insipid. Past the cluster of giggling girls whose names he can never quite remember. His eyes find Marianne. She is studying an orchid with genuine fascination, completely unaware of his attention, one hand hovering near a deep purple bloom, as though she might touch it, but doesn't quite dare. There is something in her posture, a careful dignity, a quiet self-possession, that stands in stark contrast to the desperate preening happening throughout the rest of the room. Gabriel begins to walk, not toward Lady Eliza, who has positioned herself directly in his path, not toward the refreshment table, where several strategic mothers have gathered. He walks straight toward the woman in the mustard gold gown, the woman everyone stopped seeing years ago, and the room realizes what is happening a heartbeat before it actually does. The whispers erupt like a flock of startled birds. Marianne doesn't hear them at first. She is too absorbed in the orchid, in the way its petals fold into themselves like secrets. It isn't until a shadow falls across her vision that she looks up. Gabriel Thornmont stands before her, close enough that she can see the fine stitching on his waistcoat, smell the subtle scent of sandalwood and rain that clings to him. "Lady Everley," he says, his voice deep and unexpectedly warm. He bows, a gesture so formal and deliberate that it feels almost ironic. "Forgive the interruption. I was admiring your focus. That particular specimen is Phalaenopsis amabilis, if I'm not mistaken, from the Indonesian archipelago." Marianne stares at him, certain there has been some mistake. Dukes do not speak to women like her. Not in public. Not with witnesses. Not unless absolutely necessary for the most basic civility. "Your Grace," she manages, sinking into a curtsy deeper than strictly necessary, anything to hide the confusion in her face. Yes, I believe you're correct. I was just admiring the color. The color, he repeats, and there is something in his tone, amusement, perhaps, or approval. That makes her look up. His eyes are gray, she realizes. Storm cloud gray, with an intelligence in them that is distinctly unsettling. Most people only admire the obvious specimens. The large ones. The showy ones. They miss the truly remarkable blooms hidden in the corners. Is he still talking about orchids? Before she can formulate a response, he extends his hand. Would you do me the honor of the next waltz, Lady Everly? The conservatory goes completely silent. Even the orchestra, positioned in the adjacent ballroom, seems to falter for a moment before recovering. Marianne feels the weight of 100 stunned gazes pressing against her shoulders. Feels the shock rippling outward in concentric circles. Feels her own heart hammering so loudly she's certain he must hear it. Your Grace, she begins, her voice barely above a whisper. I fear you have mistaken me for someone else. Surely you meant. I am not in the habit of making mistakes, Lady Everly, he interrupts, his expression unchanging, though something that might be the ghost of a smile touches the corner of his mouth. The waltz is about to begin. Will you dance with me? There are 1,000 reasons to refuse. 1,000 ways this will be dissected and judged and used against her. 20 years of careful invisibility about to be shattered by a single decision. Yet something in his unwavering gaze compels her. Perhaps it is the directness of his attention, so different from the sliding, dismissive glances she has grown accustomed to. Perhaps it is the way he waits, patient and unmoving, as though her answer actually matters to him. Perhaps it is simply that she is 41 years old and so very tired of being invisible. The honor, she says carefully, placing her gloved hand in his, would be mine, Your Grace. His fingers close around hers with surprising gentleness, and he leads her toward the ballroom, as though this is the most natural thing in the world. As though he has not just committed the most talked-about social transgression of the season. Behind them, the whispers explode into full voice. Is he mad? She must be twice his age. Well, not twice, but certainly. The Duke of Whitmire, dancing with her? Marianne keeps her eyes forward, her spine straight, her expression carefully neutral. She has survived 20 years of being overlooked. She can survive this too, whatever this turns out to be. The ballroom opens before them, candles reflected in the polished floor like fallen stars. The orchestra launches into a waltz, and Gabriel turns to face her, one hand settling at her waist, the other still holding hers. You realize, of course, Marianne murmurs as they begin to move, that you have just scandalized absolutely everyone. Have I? He guides her through the first turn with effortless precision, his movements confident and practiced. I was under the impression I was merely dancing with the most interesting woman in the room. Despite everything, the shock, the fear, the absolute certainty that this will somehow end badly, Marianne finds herself laughing. A soft, genuine sound that surprises even her. You are either extraordinarily kind, Your Grace, or you have a peculiar sense of humor. Perhaps, he replies, his gray eyes never leaving her face. I am simply honest. They dance. And for the first time in 20 years, Marianne Everly feels seen. Not pitted. Not dismissed. Not tolerated. Seen. The rest of the evening passes in a blur of stunned faces and poorly concealed whispers. After the waltz ends, Gabriel escorts Marianne back to her starting position with impeccable courtesy, bows over her hand, and takes his leave as though nothing extraordinary has occurred. But something has occurred. Something that will be discussed in every drawing room, whispered about in every club, dissected at every breakfast table across London by morning. The Duke of Whitmire, who has refused every eligible young lady presented to him for years, who has broken betrothals with princesses and turned down proposals arranged by Parliament itself, has danced with Lady Marianne Everly, a widow of 41, no fortune, no particular beauty, no influential family connections. The woman society has already written off as thoroughly unmarriageable. As Marianne's brother-in-law, Sir Alistair Everly, hands her into their carriage at the end of the evening, his expression is a mixture of bewilderment and barely concealed alarm. What, he demands without preamble, was that about? Marianne settles her skirts carefully, avoiding his eyes. I have no idea what you mean. Do not play coy with me, Marianne. The Duke of Whitmire singled you out. In front of everyone. There will be talk. There is always talk, she replies evenly, though her hands tremble slightly in her lap. Not about you. Not like this. Alistair leans forward, his voice dropping. If Whitmire has some inappropriate interest, you must discourage it immediately. The Everly name cannot withstand another scandal. The reference to her late husband's death, and the rumors that followed, hangs unspoken between them. I did nothing to encourage his grace's attention, Marianne says quietly. And I suspect by morning he will have forgotten the entire encounter. Powerful men are allowed their whims. But even as she says it, she touches the hand he held during their dance, remembering the unexpected gentleness of his grip, the way he looked at her as though she mattered, as though she was worth seeing. Across London, in the book-lined study of Whitmire House, Gabriel Thornmont sits with a glass of brandy, staring into the fire. His oldest friend, Lord James Hartwell, watches him with open incredulity. Have you lost your mind completely? James finally asks. Lady Everly? The woman must be 41, Gabriel supplies calmly. Yes, I know. And you danced with her. Publicly. Deliberately. Do you have any idea what people are saying? I imagine they're saying exactly what they always say when I fail to behave as expected. Gabriel takes a sip of his brandy, his expression thoughtful. That I'm difficult. Impossible to please. Deliberately contrary. This is different, Richard. This isn't refusing a debutante or breaking off an arranged match. This is actively pursuing a woman who is completely unsuitable by every measure society cares about. Gabriel finally looks at his friend, and there is something in his eyes, a quiet determination, that makes James fall silent. Then perhaps, Gabriel says softly, it is time society learned to care about different measures. He sets down his glass and rises, moving to the window that overlooks the rain-swept street. I have spent 15 years, James, being paraded before every eligible woman in England. 15 years of inane conversations and calculating glances, and women who see nothing but a title and fortune. Tonight, I met someone who didn't even want to dance with me, who looked at me as though I might be making a mistake. Perhaps you are, James suggests carefully. Gabriel shakes his head. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I felt genuinely intrigued by another person. Not impressed by her pedigree or attracted to her youth, but intrigued by her intelligence, her dignity, the way she observes the world with clear eyes. So you've decided to court her? To risk everything for a woman twice passed over by society? I've decided, Gabriel corrects, turning back to face his friend, to discover whether the connection I felt tonight was real. And if it is, he pauses, something almost vulnerable crossing his features. If it is, then yes, I will risk everything. The fire crackles in the silence that follows. Finally, James sighs. Then God help you both, because society will be merciless. Gabriel's smile is cold. Let them try. Gabriel woke to sunlight streaming through the tall windows of Whitmire House, and the certain knowledge that his mother would be furious. He was correct. The Dowager Duchess Honoria appeared in his study before he'd finished his first cup of coffee, a sheaf of papers clutched in her perfectly gloved hand. I have compiled a list, she announced without preamble, spreading the papers across his desk like battle plans. 12 eligible young ladies of impeccable breeding. Lady Eliza Renshaw remains the obvious choice, though Lady Sophia Grantham would bring considerable political advantages through her uncle's position in Parliament. Gabriel studied the list with the same enthusiasm one might reserve for a particularly tedious legal document. I see. You see? That is all you have to say? Honoria's voice climbed an octave. After last night's spectacle with that Everly woman, I had hoped he would demonstrate some contrition, some willingness to repair the damage. There is no damage to repair, mother. I danced with a lady. Once. A lady of 41 with no fortune, no beauty, and a dead husband whose demise was never adequately explained. Honoria snapped. The entire ton is talking. Lady Pemberton asked me this morning if you had suffered some sort of mental episode. Gabriel set down his cup with deliberate care. And what did you tell her? That you were merely being kind to your brother-in-law's unfortunate relation. His mother leaned forward, her expression softening into something almost pleading. Gabriel, you have responsibilities. The Whitmire line, our political alliances, everything depends on you making a proper match, not throwing yourself away on some desperate spinster. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Lady Everly is neither desperate nor a spinster. She is a widow, and I found her conversation more stimulating than anything I have endured from your list of suitable candidates in the past decade." The words hung between them, sharp and final. Honoria's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "If you pursue this madness," she said coldly, "do not expect my support." After she swept from the room, Gabriel returned to his desk and pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. He wrote 3 lines, sealed the note, and rang for his secretary. The night before, at the ball, he had been standing near the entrance to the conservatory, enduring yet another mother's breathless introduction of her daughter, when he'd noticed a figure standing alone before a landscape painting. While everyone else postured and preened, this woman studied the brushwork with genuine absorption. When she'd finally turned away from the painting, there had been something in her expression, a weary resignation, that struck him as unbearably sad. He'd followed her into the conservatory on impulse, intending merely to escape the suffocating matchmaking. But when she'd looked up at him with those clear, intelligent eyes and immediately assumed he'd made a mistake, when she'd laughed softly at his comment about overlooked orchids as though she understood exactly what he meant, he'd felt something shift inside his chest. The request for a dance had been impulsive. The moment he'd seen the room freeze, every face turning toward them in shock, he'd known he'd crossed some invisible line. But watching her face as they waltzed, seeing the way surprise gave way to cautious pleasure, he'd discovered he didn't care about lines anymore. He handed the sealed note to his secretary. "Deliver this to Lady Everly at Harrington House, and then make inquiries. Discreetly. I want to know everything about her late husband's death." The morning after the Whitmire ball, London society gathered over breakfast to feast on scandal more delicious than any pastry. In drawing rooms across Mayfair, the same scene repeated itself with minor variations. Did you see his face when he asked her to dance? As though she were some sort of treasure he'd discovered. Poor thing must have been mortified. Imagine being singled out like that at her age. My daughter was standing right there. Right there. And he walked past her without a glance. At Harrington House, Marianne learned the cost of visibility over her own breakfast. Her niece, 17-year-old Sophie, appeared in the morning room with tears streaming down her face. "The Ashfords have withdrawn their invitation to the house party," Sophie announced, her voice breaking. "Mama received the note an hour ago. No explanation, but we all know why." Marianne's teacup froze halfway to her lips. "Sophie, it's because of you," the girl continued, not unkindly, but with the brutal honesty of youth. "Because the Duke danced with you and now everyone is talking and no one wants to be associated with our family until the scandal dies down." Sir Alistair appeared in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "Sophie, leave us." When the girl had fled, he turned on Marianne with cold fury. "I warned you. Whatever game Whitmire is playing, it ends now. You will not receive him if he calls. You will not acknowledge him in public. My daughter's futures will not be sacrificed to your vanity." "My vanity." Marianne's voice emerged sharper than intended. "I did nothing to encourage." "Your presence was encouragement enough," Alistair interrupted. "A woman of your age, still attending balls like some desperate debutante. It's unseemly. From now on, you will remain at home." The injustice of it stole her breath. But before she could formulate a response, the butler appeared. "Lady Everly, the Duke of Whitmire has called. He asks if you are receiving." Alistair's face went purple. Tell him I will be down directly," Marianne interrupted, surprising herself as much as her brother-in-law. Something in her had shifted during that waltz, some long-buried resistance to being managed and diminished. "This is still my home, Alistair, and I will not be rude to a duke who has done me the courtesy of calling." Gabriel waited in the drawing room with the patience of a man accustomed to getting his way. When Marianne entered, he rose immediately, his expression warming in a way that made her pulse quicken. "Lady Everly, thank you for receiving me." He held out not flowers, as convention demanded, but a slim leather-bound volume. "I thought you might enjoy this. Essays on Renaissance painting. You seemed interested in the subject last night." She took the book with trembling hands, aware of Alistair hovering just outside the doorway. "Your Grace, this is most generous, but I fear your visit may be misconstrued." "Let it be misconstrued," Gabriel said calmly, settling into a chair as though he planned to stay. "I enjoyed our dance, Lady Everly. I found your company refreshing. I should like to continue our acquaintance, if you will permit it." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Your Grace, I am neither young nor beautiful nor accomplished in any particular way. Surely there are dozens of women more worthy of your attention. He studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes thoughtful. Tell me something, Lady Everly. What do you want? Not what your family wants, or what society expects. What do you want for yourself? The question landed like a blow. Marianne opened her mouth to answer and found she had no words. What did she want? She had spent so many years managing everyone else's expectations, smoothing over family difficulties, making herself useful and unobtrusive, that her own desires had become as invisible as she had. She began, then stopped, something painful tightening in her chest. I don't know. Gabriel leaned forward, his expression intense. Then perhaps it's time you found out. Within a week, Gabriel had called at Harrington House 3 times, escorted Marianne to a gallery exhibition, and been seen taking tea with her at Gunter's. With each public appearance, London's fascination curdled into something uglier. Viscount Lysander Carrick first appeared at White's, where gossip flowed as freely as the brandy. He was a handsome man in his late 40s, charming in that particular way that concealed rather than revealed. His connection to the Everly family was distant but sufficient to lend authority to his observations. Poor Whitmire, he remarked to a cluster of gentlemen, his tone dripping with false sympathy. Clearly bewitched by a woman who has made rather an art of managing men. Her late husband, you know, died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Lord Pemberton leaned in, eager for scandal. Mysterious how? There was an inquest, though the family managed to keep most of the details quiet. Something about a quarrel that went too far. Julian Everly was found at the bottom of the stairs at their country house, his neck broken. Lady Everly claimed it was an accident, but there were whispers at the time. Carrick paused delicately. Servants' testimony that suggested the argument had been quite violent. The story spread like fire through dry grass, growing more elaborate with each retelling. By week's end, Marianne found herself the subject of speculation that ranged from merely unkind to genuinely vicious. At Whitmire House, the Dowager Duchess received a visitor. Carrick was shown into her private sitting room with the discretion such meetings required. Your Grace, he began smoothly. I come as a friend to the family, concerned about the Duke's recent preoccupation. Honoria's eyes narrowed. Go on. I have reason to believe Lady Everly may not be the innocent victim she appears. Her husband's death, while ruled accidental, was suspicious. If proof could be found that she was somehow culpable, surely that would end my son's infatuation. It would demonstrate her unsuitability quite thoroughly, Honoria agreed. What do you need? Access to the original inquest records. They were sealed at the family's request, but with your influence. He trailed off meaningfully. Honoria rose, her decision made. Consider it done. Bring me proof that woman is dangerous, Viscount. I will handle the rest. The note arrived at Harrington House 3 days later, delivered anonymously. Marianne found it on her dressing table, a single folded paper with one word written in elegant script, murderous. Her hands shook as she burned it in the candle flame, watching the paper curl and blacken. The past she had worked so hard to bury was clawing its way back to the surface, and she knew with cold certainty that it would destroy everything. Sir Alistair found her in the library, where she'd been hiding since the note arrived. His face was grave. We need to speak. Now. He threw a newspaper onto the table before her. There, in the society column, was a thinly veiled reference to certain ladies whose tragic histories ought to disqualify them from polite society, and questions surrounding deaths too conveniently unexplained. This ends today, Alistair said flatly. I have arranged for you to retire to our property in Somerset. You will leave London within the week. You're sending me away? Marianne's voice emerged hollow. I am protecting my daughters. And the Everly name, which you seem determined to destroy. His expression hardened. You have held this family hostage for years with your martyr act, Marianne. Always so helpful, so useful, so quietly superior. But we all know the truth. Julian died because you drove him to it with your cold disapproval and your insufferable righteousness. The accusation, so monstrously unfair, broke something inside her. Years of swallowed anger erupted. Cold disapproval? Her voice shook with fury. I spent 5 years protecting this family's reputation while your brother gambled away his inheritance and came home drunk to beat me senseless. I lied to magistrates, paid off servants, and took the blame for his accidents because the precious Everly name couldn't withstand the truth. And when he finally killed himself through his own recklessness, I let you all paint me as the shrew who drove him to it. So yes, Alistair, I have held this family together. You're welcome." The words hung in the stunned silence. Alistair's face had gone white. "I don't believe you. I don't care what you believe," Marianne said tiredly. "But I won't be exiled for the crime of finally being seen by someone. Tell the Duke I cannot receive him. I'll end this myself." She met Gabriel the next day in the botanical gardens, in a quiet corner where the palm fronds created privacy. He knew immediately something was wrong. "Marianne, what's happened?" She couldn't quite meet his eyes. "Your Grace, I must ask you to cease your attentions. This association is damaging your reputation and destroying what little peace my family has. I am not worth this trouble. Not worth." Gabriel's voice roughened with anger. "Who told you that?" "Everyone." She finally looked at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "They're right. I am too old, too complicated, too tainted by scandal. You should find some lovely young woman and forget you ever danced with me." He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders gently but firmly. "I will do no such thing. Marianne, I don't know what lies they've been feeding you, but I know this. You are the first woman I've met in 15 years who makes me feel alive. If there's a scandal in your past, tell me the truth and let me help you face it. The truth will destroy you." "Then let it," he said fiercely. "But I will not abandon you to face wolves alone. Trust me, Marianne. Let me in." She looked into his storm-gray eyes and felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. Perhaps, after all these years, she didn't have to carry everything alone. "My husband," she whispered, "didn't die in an accident." Will Gabriel stand by Marianne when he learns the dark truth about her past? Can their growing love survive the vicious scandal that's about to explode across London society? And what will the Dowager Duchess do when she discovers the proof she's been seeking? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on the best part. The story is about to take a dramatic turn that will leave you breathless. If you're rooting for Marianne and Gabriel's forbidden romance, like this video. Your support helps us bring you more emotionally powerful stories like this one. Gabriel's investigation began quietly, with visits to places the Everly family had hoped would remain forgotten. The old hunting lodge in Hampshire stood abandoned, its windows dark with grime, but the elderly groundskeeper remembered everything. Lord Julian was a devil when he drank, the man said, his weathered hands trembling as he accepted Gabriel's coin. "Beat her ladyship something fierce. I heard her screaming from the servants' quarters more than once." The night he died, he'd lost a fortune at cards. Came home raging. She tried to calm him, and he went after her with a poker from the fireplace. Gabriel's jaw tightened. And then, she ran. He chased her, drunk and stumbling, missed his footing at the top of the stairs, and went down hard. Broke his neck on the landing. The man's rheumy eyes met Gabriel's. She could have let him die and called it justice. Instead, she sent for the doctor, tried to save him. When the magistrate came asking questions, she told them it was her fault, that she'd argued with him over his gambling. Took the blame to keep the Everly name clean. The country doctor told a similar story, his medical records documenting injuries Marianne had explained away as clumsiness. A maid, long since dismissed, spoke of nights when Lady Everly locked herself in her room, while Lord Julian raged through the house. Each piece of testimony built the same picture. A woman who had survived hell, and then allowed herself to be vilified for it. Meanwhile, Carrick had obtained the original inquest papers through Honoria's influence. He'd spent days carefully altering key phrases, changing fell during an altercation to push during an altercation, transforming accident into murder through the strategic addition of a single word. He began distributing copies to select members of society, always with the same regretful whisper. "I hesitate to share this, but given the Duke's involvement, don't we have a duty to warn him?" The day Gabriel returned to London, he found Marianne waiting in the botanical gardens as he'd requested. Rain fell in sheets, drumming against the glass roof, and she stood among the ferns looking pale and resolved. "I should not have told you," she said before he could speak. "You should forget everything and choose someone untainted. Marianne, my husband died because of me, Gabriel. Because I couldn't manage him properly, couldn't make him happy. The magistrate ruled it accidental, but everyone knew. I drove him to drink, to gambling, to rage. And when he fell, you survived him." Gabriel's voice cut through her words like steel. "I know what happened, Marianne. I know about the beatings, the gambling debts, the violence. I know you took the blame to protect a family that has never protected you." She stared at him, rain-soaked and trembling. "How could you possibly?" "Because I asked the right questions of the right people." He stepped closer, his coat darkening with rain. "The only thing you're guilty of is extraordinary courage and misplaced loyalty. But believing you're not worth saving? That stops now. You don't understand what staying with me will cost you. Then let me be clear." He took her face in his hands, his gray eyes fierce. "I have spent my entire life surrounded by people who want something from me. Title, money, position, power. You are the only person I've ever met who asks for nothing. Who sees me, Gabriel, not the Duke. If loving you costs me everything else, I'll count it a fair trade." "Gabriel, trust me," he interrupted, his voice dropping to something raw and pleading. "For once in your life, Marianne, trust someone completely. Let me stand with you. Let me fight for you. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved." The rain hammered down as she looked up at him. This impossible man who had walked into her life and refused to accept the story society had written about her worth. "Yes," she whispered finally, the word half sob, half prayer. "Yes." The summer garden party at Whitmire should have been beautiful. The lawns rolled green and perfect beneath a cloudless sky. Tables draped in white linen dotted the grounds, and society's finest circulated with champagne and calculated smiles. Marianne arrived late, escorted by a grim-faced Gabriel. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw Lady Eliza Renshaw holding court near the terrace, her mother beaming possessively at her side. "What is she doing here?" Marianne asked quietly. Gabriel's expression darkened. "My mother's work, I suspect. Stay close to me." During tea on the lawn, Honoria rose with theatrical grace, her voice carrying across the assembled guests. "How wonderful to have you all here on this most special occasion. My son has been contemplating his future, as any responsible duke must, and I am delighted to announce that very soon, we shall have cause for great celebration." She turned to Lady Eliza with a pointed smile. "Some unions are simply meant to be, are they not?" The implication hung heavy in the warm air. Gabriel's hand found Marianne's under the table, his grip tight and reassuring even as whispers erupted around them. "Mother," Gabriel said, his voice carrying clearly, "you presume too much." Honoria's smile flickered. "Gabriel, darling, we discussed." "You discussed." "I made no commitments." He stood, drawing Marianne up with him. "If you'll excuse us, Lady Everly and I require a moment." He guided her through the gawking crowd into the house, to a small withdrawing room overlooking the gardens. The moment the door closed, he turned to her, his composure cracking. "I will not let her manipulate us. Not anymore." He reached into his waistcoat and withdrew a ring box, his hands unsteady. "This isn't how I planned this. I wanted romance, privacy, and perfection. But Marianne, my mother, has just made it clear that if I don't act now, she'll spend the rest of my life engineering situations exactly like the one outside." He opened the box, revealing an emerald surrounded by diamonds, the setting antique and exquisite. "This was my grandmother's. She was a formidable woman who married for love despite her family's objections. She would have liked you, I think." Marianne's breath caught as he knelt before her. "Marry me," Gabriel said simply. "Not because of my mother's schemes or society's expectations. Marry me because when I'm with you, I am more myself than I have ever been. Because you make me laugh and think and feel things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. Marry me because I love you, Marianne, desperately and completely." Tears blurred her vision. "Gabriel, your mother will be furious. Society will be scandalized. Are you certain?" "I have never been more certain of anything." His gray eyes held hers, steady and sure. "Say yes, please." She looked at this man who had seen her at her worst and chosen to stay, who had investigated her past not to confirm her guilt, but to prove her innocence, who knelt before her now, offering everything, asking only that she believe she deserved it. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger, rose, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her forget everything but this moment, this man, this impossible gift of being loved. "Keep it quiet," she begged when they finally parted. "Just for now, until you're absolutely certain. I'm certain now, but if you need time to be certain, I can wait. He smiled, that rare, transforming smile, though not very patiently. Honoria's family celebration arrived 2 weeks later, half of London crowding into Whitmire's grand ballroom. Marianne entered on Gabriel's arm, the emerald ring hidden beneath her glove, her heart hammering against her ribs. The evening began with champagne and speculation. Then Honoria swept to the center of the room, raising her glass with maternal triumph. My dear friends, thank you for joining us tonight. It gives me such joy to finally announce my son's engagement to Lady Eliza Renshaw, a union that will strengthen both our families and— Mother! Gabriel's voice cut through her speech like a blade. That's quite enough. The room went silent. Honoria's smile froze. Gabriel, this is hardly. I am not engaged to Lady Eliza. He crossed to Marianne, took her hand, and stripped off her glove in one smooth motion. The emerald caught the candlelight, impossible to miss. I am engaged to Lady Marianne Everly. Have been for 2 weeks. The explosion of whispers was immediate. Honoria went white with rage. But before she could speak, Viscount Carrick stepped forward, documents in hand. Your Grace, before you make a terrible mistake, perhaps you should see these. He held up the altered inquest papers. Official records proving Lady Everly was complicit in her husband's death. She pushed him down those stairs, Your Grace. She's a murderess who's deceived you all. Marianne felt the room's attention turn predatory. Gabriel's hand tightened on hers. I've seen those documents, Gabriel said calmly. Or rather, I've seen the originals, before you doctored them. Shall I share what they actually say? He gestured, and his secretary stepped forward with witnesses, the groundskeeper, the doctor, servants who had worked at the Everly estate. One by one, they testified to Julian Everly's violence, his gambling, the night he died chasing his wife in a drunken rage. Lady Everly's only crime, Gabriel said, his voice ringing clear, was protecting a family that never deserved her loyalty. She endured years of abuse, and when her husband's own recklessness killed him, she took the blame to spare them scandal. And you, he turned to Carrick with withering contempt, tried to twist that sacrifice into murder to serve my mother's ambitions. Honoria sank into a chair, her composure shattered. Carrick backed toward the door, his scheme exposed. But Gabriel wasn't finished. Marianne Everly is the strongest, most honorable woman I have ever met. She is going to be my wife and your Duchess. If any of you have objections, the door is behind you. No one moved. Marianne stood trembling at his side, tears streaming down her face, as Gabriel turned to her and said softly, You don't have to hide anymore. The wedding took place 6 weeks later in a small chapel on the Whitmire estate. Many of society's grand families sent regrets. Previous engagements, sudden illnesses, urgent matters requiring their attention elsewhere. But those who came mattered more than those who stayed away. Marianne walked down the aisle in ivory silk, her hand steady on her brother Edward's arm. He had apologized the week before, his voice breaking as he begged forgiveness for years of blindness. She'd given it freely, too happy to carry old grudges. Gabriel waited at the altar looking at her, as though she were something precious and miraculous. When she reached him, he whispered, You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She laughed softly. I'm 41, Gabriel. You're perfect, he corrected, and kissed her hand before the vicar could even begin. 18 months later, the Whitmire Conservatory blazed with light for the Duchess's winter gathering. Marianne moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, the emerald ring now joined by a wedding band, her hand occasionally resting on the subtle swell beneath her emerald gown. The pregnancy had shocked everyone, herself included. But Gabriel had simply gathered her into his arms and laughed with pure joy, declaring it proof that the universe approved of their match. She paused near the orchids, the same spot where she'd stood that first night, invisible and overlooked. Now people sought her out, valued her opinions, told their daughters to emulate her courage. The transformation still felt surreal. Hiding from your own party, Duchess? Gabriel appeared at her elbow, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He'd given her 1 sip before confiscating hers. Doctor's orders. Just remembering, she said, leaning into his warmth. This is where we met, where you asked me to dance and destroyed my quiet life. Regrets? His voice held humor, but also something vulnerable. a question he needed answered even now. She turned to face him fully, this man who had seen her and chosen her and fought for her against the whole world. Gabriel, if you offered me the choice, return to that invisible life or stay here with you, with all the scandal and whispers and difficulty, I would choose you. Every single time. His expression softened into something so tender it made her chest ache. Good. Because I would burn every ballroom in London before I'd go back to the cold life I had before you. Outside, rain began to fall, pattering against the glass roof just as it had that first night. Gabriel set down their glasses and held out his hand. Dance with me. There was no orchestra this time, just the rain's rhythm and the distant murmur of their guests. But as Gabriel drew her close and they swayed together among the orchids, Marianne felt the last piece of her old fear dissolve. She was 43 now, a duchess, soon to be a mother, loved completely by a man who had proven his devotion in every way that mattered. Society had said she was too old for love, too damaged for happiness, too impossible for any fairy tale ending. Society, it turned out, had been spectacularly wrong. I love you, Gabriel murmured against her hair. My impossible, magnificent duchess. And I love you, she whispered back. My unexpected, extraordinary duke. The rain continued its gentle percussion against the glass, the world outside reduced to shadows and possibility. But here, in this warm circle of light and orchids and enduring love, they danced on. Some stories, after all, were worth the wait. Dear friend, thank you for staying with us through Marianne and Gabriel's entire journey. Their story reminds us of something our world too often forgets. Love recognizes no age, time, or circumstance. When two souls truly see each other, everything else, society's judgments, cruel whispers, even our own doubts, fades into insignificance. Marianne was told she was too old, too complicated, too damaged for happiness. Yet she found not just love, but the kind of partnership that transforms everything. Because the right person doesn't arrive when we're perfect. They arrive when we're ready. When we've lived enough to know our own worth, survived enough to appreciate genuine connection, and grown brave enough to accept love when it finally finds us. If this story touched your heart, we have something special coming next week. Another tale of impossible love, scandal, and the courage to defy every expectation. You won't want to miss it. Please like this video if Marianne and Gabriel's story moved you. Every like tells us you want more stories celebrating love in all its unexpected forms. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next romantic journey. We have so many more beautiful stories waiting to be told. Tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment in this story? Was it the first dance? The rain-soaked confession? The public declaration at the party? We love hearing which scenes touched your heart most deeply. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for love, for new beginnings, for happiness. Your story isn't over. It's still being written. Thank you for allowing us to share this tale with you. Until our next story, remember, you are never too old, too complicated, or too anything to deserve extraordinary love. With gratitude and warmth. Duke's Royal Library. See you in our next story. Thank you.